Yeah, he's Andre.
Which is the question is whether or not.
Hello,
Andre.
can people hear me? Yes, all right.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry about that, guys. Real quick wrap up. The Ruby community is kind of creepy. There's a guy named Mats. Mina Swan means Mats is nice, and so we are nice. Ruby is dynamically typed. It's completely object-oriented. I'm going to try to show examples. So I'll be switching back and forth between the presentation and a terminal, which I don't know that you guys can see because it's on the extended desktop. So I probably have to do like desktop mirroring, right, to make this work. So let's do that.
Well,
now it's back to my face. Share.
Okay.
All right, now it's good. All right, slowly but surely, we're going to make this work. So the first thing I wanted to kind of show was how is completely object-oriented. So I have a few examples drummed up of some Ruby examples, few examples of Ruby examples, because that's not redundant. The first one is object. So one of the neat things about Ruby, and can everybody see that, or is it super tiny on the screen? So I think I can just Command plus this up, right? So no primitives, everything's an object. You can create methods for everything. So right here is kind of the neat example of that is you take an integer, 10, which is a numeric type, right? And you can just do dot times to it, and it iterates 10 times, right? So if you take this and you boot up IRB, oh, actually, I don't even have to boot up IRB, but that's another thing. So IRB, that's another neat thing about Ruby is if you install Ruby, it ships with interactive Ruby shell, which is what IRB stands for. They didn't work an S into the acronym, but it's pretty nice. So you can do things like puts hello world, and it echoes hello world to you, and the value of the current pointer is nil, right? So and you can do A equals 2 plus 2, and if I puts A, right? So IRB, very neat. But I don't need to do that because I've got hash bang at the top of all of my examples. So what we will do is just run this, and you can see it prints hello world 10 times, which is what we'd expect it to do. This is a powerful feature of Ruby, the fact that everything is an object. Anybody who is familiar with object-oriented programming paradigms can understand why. Yes?
Is there a difference between standard out and standard error?
Yeah, there is, yeah.
So it does know the difference.
It does know a difference, yeah. Puts is standard out.
Okay.
Yeah.
For IRB, do you have to put puts to actually preview things, or can you just like put a variable name and then just hit enter and it'll show what it actually is?
So that's a good question. So puts is actually standard out, right? So that actually prints the value of the thing that you wanted to your standard output. If I just type the variable name, what it's actually going to tell me is what's currently like in memory of IRB, right? So it's not, it does that little hash rocket thing, the equal rocket. So let's do this again. So if I'm in IRB and I do A equals 2 plus 2, that little equal sign.
So if you put
that,
enter, okay.
It does that again, as opposed to puts, right? And you form, well, actually I can just do this, right? As opposed to that, which is actually standard output A.
Okay.
Yeah, small difference. Does everybody kind of understand the difference there? Right, okay. So, great question though. Okay, cool. So where is my presentation again? Here we go. Maybe it's easier if I just kind of leave it like this, but then you can see my notes. Everything is monkey patchable, right? So the value of this is that I can overwrite functionality. I can overwrite the methods for any object that currently exists in Ruby. If I want to go in and I want to change the meaning of addition for my numeric types, I can do that. I can also do that with the operators, which is nice. The operators in Ruby are just syntactic sugar to the underlying methods. So everything's monkey patchable, which can be very dangerous if you don't document what you're doing very well. But again, it to the flexibility of the language. Neat. You can shoot yourself in the foot. What was it that Bjorn Stroustrup used to say about C, right? Yeah. Right, yeah, something like that, right? Everything can have a closure. Closures are neat. So creating do-end blocks within your code is a thing that you can do. So we'll go back to my right here, and so monkey patch example. So you can do something like this. I can take integer, and I can define a method OOM, which stands for order of magnitude. It was just a dumb example. And what it'll do is it'll take the value that you input for the integer, or the value of the integer, and say that's like in the blank range. So if I come back here and I run this little example, I'm going to do 13.OOM. 13, that's like in the tens, right? So order of magnitude, I monkey patched the function OOM into the class integer. That's an example of that. You can also do it with operators. So in this particular case, I'm overriding the plus method for integer. And you can see it's kind of goofy, right? Because what I had to do was then multiply by -1 and subtract it because I overrode the plus operator. So you end up with like a crazy, obnoxious thing. But for the purposes of this example, 13 plus 5, then I can do, math is easy, 13 plus 5 equals 18C. So I overrode the plus. You can really do damage with this, but it's flexible. Ruby's flexible. Moral of the story, Ruby is flexible. And then the last thing, what did I mention last? Did I get to the, yeah. So everything has a closure, which means essentially that you can put do-end blocks around stuff and isolate and more specifically say what a particular method is supposed to do. So in this particular case, what I have is an array of characters, and for each, that's the iterator for the array, I do this certain thing with the index, and all I'm doing is capitalizing the value. So that's nice. Being able to do this do-end stuff saves you a lot of time writing your standard loops and your standard iterators. It's pretty nice. Everything's enumerable. Just about everything that should be enumerable is enumerable. So the example here, if I need to run it. So there you go. This is a little Power Rangers reference. I don't know if anybody got that, but okay. So it's a single inheritance language. So people might be used to the multiple inheritance paradigms that are available in like Python. In Ruby, you get single inheritance. A class can only inherit from one parent class, but they give you this thing called mixins, which is the ability to import modules ad hoc into your class. So an example of this would be if I write a new class that happens to be iteratable in some sort of way, I can import the mixin for enumerable, which is another class. It's a module filled with methods that gives me all kinds of add-on features for my new iteratable class. So an example of this would be like, I think I have an example, actually. Let's see. No, I don't have an example. Oh, well, darn it. What's the canonical example? I'm sure I have that. So the canonical example is if you have a method, or if you have a class that implements the each method, you can then bring in the enumerable module, which gets you all kinds of other stuff. And we can dive into that a little bit more later. But the basic idea is single inheritance. It kind of cleans up the whole class inheritance hierarchy problem that you often get when you're inheriting from a bunch of other classes in any other language. It makes things a little bit cleaner. Gems. So there are these things in every language. They're libraries. In particular, Ruby calls them gems. They're self-contained. They can be programs in and of themselves. They can just be bunches of modules. This is how you do your includes, right? So in Ruby, you require a gem or you bring in an external dependency. This is how you do it. The beauty of gems is that there's a million of them, and they do all kinds of different stuff. Marcin would probably argue that that's also the curse of gems, is that there's millions of them, and you can have them do any number of things. I'm going to highlight a few of my favorites. First one is bcrypt. So this is, here, actually, let me pull this up. And let's see if the, oh no, it doesn't work. So Ruby gems is kind of like your big inventory of gems that exist in Ruby. And these are hyperlinked, but because I can't click them for some reason, my mouse was disappearing. We'll just bring them here. So bcrypt is an example of a gem. So this is an OpenBSD-based project for hashing passwords. It's the underlying library that gets used by any password management system, essentially. Anything that stores passwords is probably hashing them with bcrypt if it's worth its salt, which is a password hashing joke, if anybody got that one. So, but that being said, here at NASA, I know. Here at NASA, we shouldn't be writing our own password management systems because we should all be integrating with ICAM's functionality, right? So, yeah, okay. But anyway, it's not, right? You're correct. Then there's this other one called Ruby Nmap, which I make great use of. Ruby Nmap is a wrapper around Nmap. Everybody knows what Nmap is. It's the network mapping utility. It's a great tool. It's a Swiss Army knife for testing things that exist on a network. It's really neat. Ruby Nmap is the Ruby wrapper around that. So now I can write Ruby scripts that call an underlying Nmap installation on my computer. Makes for great fun. If anybody here has been harassed by me about Cypher usage for your web servers, has anybody gotten harassing emails from me about that? All right, so one of the things that I'm doing at the agency level nowadays is inventorying people's Cypher usage on their web servers if you're public facing. And I'm doing that using a Ruby script that I've written that uses an underlying Nmap installation. I run a script called enumerate SSL ciphers, and I check to see if you're using weak ones. That's good that none of you have been harassed by me. That means that I still have some positive vibes in the room.
You don't have access to closed networks.
That's true. Yeah, and I'm only doing public facing stuff. There's another neat one called Boom. Yeah, so Boom is text snippets from the command line. So this is actually a self-contained program that runs as a Ruby gem. You install it using the normal gem management system, which is called gem. You can see all the gems that I have installed. I don't think I have Boom currently installed because it actually conflicts with the version of Ruby that I'm currently running. But what it does is if you do install it, is it allows you to access text snippets from your command line and automatically put them on your clipboard, which is really nice. So you can do things like boom, GIFs, funny person. And if I had a GIF of a funny person, it would take that GIF and it would put it on my clipboard, and then I could put it in Slack. I could do whatever with it. The developer of this is a guy named Zach Holman, who used to work at GitHub and is now doing his own thing. And he has a funny screen share on YouTube where he talks about Boom, if anybody's interested. It's one of my favorite gems. Jekyll, which is a static page generator. Does anybody know about Jekyll? So Jekyll underlies GitHub pages, which is kind of how you can make quick little blogs on GitHub, if anybody does that. That's how my website is built. So we'll just go there real quick as an example. So this is a Jekyll blog that is checked into GitHub. And what is it called? Yeah. So this is the stack of static files generated by Jekyll, which is a Ruby gem that runs on my computer, that defines this page, this entire website, actually. So this is all Jekyll static pages, which is why it loads super quick. These are all static resources. Another really